Hey everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the Level Design Lobby. On this episode, you're joined by not only me, but two incredible guests, which is that of me speaking to that of Spencer Stark and Rowan Hall, talking to them about something a bit more different from what we usually talk about in terms of video games, but actually that of more tabletop RPG games. With the launch of their new game, DaggerHeart, I get a chance to sit down with them and discuss how it is that they've approached this. What differences do we find in between that of this style of design and video game design? It was an incredible experience for me. They're all lovely, the people behind the scenes, from that of Jeremy to that we speak to, both Spencer and Rowan. All lovely people, had a great time, and I hope that you enjoy the interview. So without further ado, let's take a look at him. Congratulations on the success of the launch. How are you feeling with all of that? It's a lot to make something, so to be able to release it must be many things.
Yeah. It's been like 4 years of my life. It's been like at least 2 years of your life.
Yeah.
So being on a project for that long, intermittently, we were working on other stuff too during that time, but like to finally see it out in the world is it feels surreal. Like it doesn't even feel real yet. Like
Wow.
You're feeling.
Yeah, it feels overwhelming, but in a good way.
Yeah.
It's so many good things happening all at once. It's really nice to have it out in hands to see people playing it.
Now I'm just going to call time here. I know you're excited to get more into the interview, but I realized over the interview we didn't get really a chance to sit down and talk about both that of Spencer and Rowan and kind of who they actually are. We were just straight into the game. Time was a little bit limited. Again, they're extremely busy. We're on the opposite ends of the planet just due to elements of that. So what I want to actually do is kind of talk about that here and discuss kind of a bit more about them and kind of their backstory in this, right? So Spencer is that of a senior game designer at Critical Role. For those of you who may not know, I imagine most of you will, but Critical Role is arguably, if not the biggest tabletop content maker. I don't know if that does them justice, but Critical Role do incredible playthroughs of not only their games here, but originally starting on other tabletop RPGs filled with incredible voice actors that have starred in a lot of video games. Recently, they have been expanding more and more, creating that of board games, other tabletop RPGs, and really kind of trying to create more incredible games for us as players to get our filthy little mitts on and be able to engage. And so Spencer was brought on, and he's created a fair few different games as well, really been venturing forward towards that. He created that of Alice is Missing, as well as others. I believe Obscure was one of the ones he designed as well, and generally just one more, Kids on Brooms as well, some of the bigger ones that he has worked on. And yeah, he's been really honing his craft on the aspect of tabletops, multiple projects with Critical Role and before Critical Role, and is very heavily invested, as you'll hear him mention. I don't know where we're putting this in the episode, but you'll hear him mention again how he's used dice in again very different ways that, again, just from my perspective, wouldn't even thought about. So it's fascinating to see there. And then Rowan is also a game designer over at Critical Role, worked together with that of Spencer on other projects as well. Not only this, but she is an incredible writer, as well as the host of that of the Willing and Fable podcast. She's written for many other forms of media as well, and heavily engaged in that of the narrative side, as you'll hear them talk more about kind of their split, their dynamic for this, and her really focusing on not only the narrative and helping that of players deliver the narrative that they're experiencing, but also encouraging that of narrative to be developed in the mechanics as well. And again, they go into much more, but I realized with the time we had, time difference, we didn't get to talk much about their path into that of the industry. So I want to give a quick little interlude into that of these incredible designers, a little bit of their path, and now we'll go back to the episode and hear more about how they design and what inspires them as they go through this as well. So thanks, and back to the interview, guys.
That's amazing to hear. And I guess with that for you guys, I want to ask, you mentioned it's different, taking different years of your lives and that, and like, how do you guys start on something like this in terms of an idea? It's, I think compared to me, I make video games. So for you, the fact that, the most powerful tool really is the human imagination, the human mind. So containing that in a way to make rules sets to help guide and help players, how do you start tackling that?
Instead of a traditional sponsor, what I'm offering now is that of joining the mailing list. Social media is constantly changing all the time, as we're seeing some people are leaving Twitter, others are choosing to remain, Blue Sky, Threads, all of this. So it's really hard to reach out to all of you incredible aspiring and current game devs. So what I'm offering here is that of a emailing list. So if you want to be kept up to date with all of the great level design news, as well as get your free guide, which is my 10 tips towards better level design, then please join the mailing list. You'll be making sure to get 3 emails a week with me sharing that of different resources, ideas, as well as what I've learned through my career and some Q&As. So if you're constantly looking to improve level design and instead trying to figure out where all this information may be, then look no further than the mailing list. Check down in the description below to join now and get that of your 10 tips to improve your level design.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some overlap there with video games, which is to say, like, for me, starting a new game usually comes from either a mechanic that I'm excited about and that I can see the fiction of, right? Meaning, like, I have a really cool, let's say, dice mechanic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I know what kind of story that dice mechanic would work really well for. An example of that, the first game that I have published is called Icarus, and it's a game about like how great civilizations fall. And so you're sort of playing this like more macro level game about this place, and as dice rolls are failed to like influence the city, you're stacking those dice up in the center of the table.
All right, jeez.
And so as you stack those, they get higher and higher, your failures get more and more prominent, and then it's the point you put a die on, and the tower falls, and when the tower falls, the civilization falls, and the game comes to an end. So that's a place where like mechanic first, that's sort of mechanic first design of like, oh, I had a dice stacking thing that I wanted to do, and this story feels like it maps on that. And then I think there's also like the opposite side of that, which is like, okay, we know what kind of theme or feel or subgenre or something like that we want to play in. Let's go find mechanics that work really well inside that subgenre, and then maybe innovate some stuff that is new inside of that space too, and sort of mash everything together and see what we get and play. I don't know from your perspective.
No, you said exactly what I was gonna say. By the time I come in, usually it's narrative to mechanic at that point. We're in kind of more of that phase. I should say. Don't bounce around, but I think that's kind of what we're
and I tend to be the mechanist and Rowan is the mythologist. So
that's fair.
So I think that's also part of it is like, I will be working on the mechanical side of it and then bring it to her, and she's like, she has like, from a mythology side, from a lore side, like, okay, well, what if we tried this? Because I feel like that would resonate more with XYZ. And so I feel like there might be some overlap there of like, oh, I have this really cool I figured out how to make in Unity or something, and like I want to some code and like I want to implement that. What do I use it in? I want to make a X kind of game.
That's it. No, and I want to ask, because you mentioned obviously your two, like I guess the word would be duality, two different approaches, right? The mechanically and narrative, and putting them together. With that, I guess like I said, design more video games. This side of design generally just fascinates me because I think it's so, there is similarities, but there are so many differences with what we do in terms of design. And I want to ask, with like adding the narrative in that, how do you find like is the what way to approach about it? Sometimes I'm sure you'll bring a narrative idea and then you see how to retrofit that with mechanics, but yet other times it's coming up with lore for a pre-existing mechanic. I guess, how do you start that? How do you approach that kind of aspect?
It's funny, kind of like the duality dice, to continue.
Yeah. I've got that questions later. Don't worry. I can tease.
It only works when they come together. So I think that we do kind of put ourselves in these two categories for explanation purposes, but for the most part, we work together, bouncing back and forth all the time. So we were, I guess, most recently working on the Warlock, which is now available on Void, and we started that by standing in front of a big whiteboard and saying, what story are we trying to tell? And throwing around different narrative beats we were looking to hit, and also different mechanics that may or may not come into play there. So it is a constant back and forth, and there isn't as much of a dividing line, I think, in practice.
No, there's really not. It's like, it's so minimal in that, like, there might be a cool mechanic that I'm like, hey, I think this I have this idea for like a specific dice thing, or like the Warlock came out of like, okay, well, we know we want to do favor with the patron, so how do we mechanize it? Right? And I'm like, okay, well, I'll come up with 5 different ways, and then I'll bring one of them, one I think is strongest, back to the team, and then we'll shape it from there. But like, there's so much back and forth that I think we both come from narrative backgrounds, and so I think no matter how we're approaching the project, it usually is at least coming from some place of narrative. But it's really about like finding the harmony, the marriage of when the mechanic speaks to the theme, and then oftentimes the bump that you'll feel when you're playing is when it doesn't.
Right.
And you're like, oh, I see, this feels wrong. And maybe you don't know why yet, but like, this doesn't, that bump is like, the mechanics aren't lining up with the story. So in a narrative forward game like DaggerHeart, that is one of the big red flags, right?
And I guess with you guys like working on this one, you know, there tends to be core pillars we kind of look at when designing games. And when you're asking that about, like you mentioned there about narrative almost being that one of your pillars for this, I guess, how do you make sure that it aligns with that? As you mentioned, there's that feeling of like, hey, this isn't working, this isn't clicking. How is it, do you make sure that you align to these core pillars and always double check, hey, have we gone too far down this road, or actually this aligns perfectly, let's explore more?
That's such a good question. I think a lot of times when we approach something, whether it be a class in the case of the Warlock, or even a campaign frame, one of the first things that we do is sit down and say, what story are we trying to tell here? Or what type of story are we trying to open up? Sometimes that manifests as like what tropes we're trying to use. Sometimes that manifests as like what mechanics have appeared in stories throughout time, in my case. And having that spread in front of us, I think, allows us to know when we've got the target. We're basically building a target to then know when we're hitting it.
And I think that there's, you know, there's some stopgaps. So like, one of the big things that I found is really important is actually, and I did this from the very get-go on DaggerHeart, which is like, I have 6 design pillars that are written out. Like, I sit down and make a document that's like 6 things that I want this game to do. Now, that doesn't mean that those are set in stone necessarily. Maybe down the road, I realize, actually, number 3 is not something that's important to me anymore. Number 3 is not something that I feel like this game can hit because it's incongruous with number 5 or whatever. Like, they're flexible still, but at least I know coming in, these are the 6 things that this game that be success for this game. And then from there, I think my goal is to like sort of put in checkpoints for myself of like, okay, when I'm conceptualizing the idea for this mechanic, does it align with most, if not all, of my design goals? cool. So at conception, we're checking like, it's 4 of those 6. There's 2 that maybe it doesn't. Okay, well, we'll explore that later. Whether that's like it negates them or it just is neutral to them. But I think that like that's one. And then the second one is like, okay, we've made it. Now we have to. We've conceptualized the idea. Now let's write it. In writing, like if I write it on a character sheet, does it still do that?
Yeah.
And then there's playing it with us, and then there's the play testing with the wider audience. Like, okay, maybe for us it does that, but when we expose it to somebody that's not us or our group, and they go, oh wow, this doesn't feel like X, Y, or Z, and we're seeing 75-85% of people saying like it doesn't, in more or less words, it doesn't hit that design pillar for them. We go, okay, we need to recalibrate what our perspective on that design pillar is. Maybe we're insulated because of the kind of games we enjoy or the way that we play, and into account. So I think having those stop gaps are also really important.
Yeah, no, these are great answers, and I really appreciate just again hearing these kind of like processes, right? There's such an important part when making this. And I guess just this question's more for me because again it's just more my curiosity.
Sure.
You guys have to deal with a lot of randomization in terms of with what players do, right? Like in terms of my line of work, we kind of teach the player the mastery of a skill, right? Whether that's timing a jump, aiming correctly, triggering a mechanic. But again, I know we've got the duality dice now. This is what it'll lead to. But I'm curious with you having to leave a lot up to chance, right? Like the player can't master or improve how they roll a dice, right? So how does that influence and also makes you realize, hey, we don't control this and that's okay? How do you kind of operate around that?
One of the things that we talk a lot in terms of allowing for, I guess, infinite stories to be told is really focusing on building a very, very strong foundation and then a really solid scaffolding. So for core, one of the things that we really had to pay attention to was making sure that we hit all of the basics. So I know like a lot of us have been playing games for a really long time. When we get a set of rules, we're always trying to think of the weird out there choices. And so part of it was streamlining back and saying, okay, you know, even in the art, like Loreborn or Wildborn, we want to show a forest. We want to show people living in the woods and then invite people to expand that in infinite ways. So when we're building the scaffolding, a lot of times we talk about like opening door, like setting doors for people. And one of my favorite phrases to teach people when they come onto the team is to look for the toy, which is kind of a silly little phrase.
It makes great sense.
Writing lore, we always want it to be playable at the table. What in this writing can we play with? Where is the toy? What can the GM bring to the players? And everybody can get their hands into the sandbox and get messy. So we're always looking for where people can play, which means it's a lot of like setting things down and leaving hands off.
I think that the approach has to be slightly different than it would be in a video game, in just that like we have parameters, but they're slightly different, right? Like one of the big things that we talk about is like, instead of there being a game engine that defines what is happening or a specific storyline that defines what's happening, it's the players at the table and the GM, which means those are kind of the computer in some respect, which is part of the reason why we build in a really strong session 0, because number one thing that we can do as a table is create those parameters together so that we all understand what we're making. So like essentially we are giving tools in the book as the designers to say like, here's how to build those parameters at the table. Here's how to like run a session where you are getting the information that you need and getting the like bounds as you need of what you're about to play. Because ultimately, unlike a video game where like you can't go over the hill because I've played specific, like the mesh just doesn't allow it.
Boundaries, all of that.
Instead, it's like, okay, well, we're staying inside of this subgenre because we've said that we are telling we're doing Colossus of the Drylands, which is one of the campaign frames that's like Wild West meets Shadow of the Colossus, like Red Dead Redemption and Shadow of the Colossus combined together. Those two like touch points, take those two and imagine anything the combination, and that's kind of what that campaign frame does. And so in doing that, we are like essentially telling people, asking the players and the GM, everybody at the table, to buy in to that fiction. And so that's the only way we can kind of do that. And so that's why we take so much time in the book to define it, to help shape that.
No, that's amazing, guys. And like I said, that was my greedy question. So thank you for giving me the answer.
And shout out to you as a video game designer. Thank you for always making like secret invisible platforms where if I jump close enough, I can still land. Like
that's mainly me fucking off, guys. Don't worry. I'm trying to help myself as well.
I think one more thing I wanted to touch on there with that question is like you're asking like how do we you can't get better at rolling the dice, right? So how do I feel like my character is getting better? That there's invisible work that is done on the GM side as there is on the video game side of like we want you to feel like you're improving, and also we have to constantly challenge you. So as you get better, we also have to up the difficulty. And so in the weird thing is, the secret is like if we didn't progress you, we could keep everything the same, pretty much the same difficulty, and you would get slightly better because you'd be better at a video game, because you might be better at jumping from one ledge to another or something. But like you would never feel like you were really, like your character wouldn't get better in a mechanical sense. And so we don't have a one-to-one for like, oh, I'm good at that dexterity, but we do have a one-to-one for like, oh, I can make my character feel more powerful. Right. And so one of the interesting things is like leveling up, getting in DaggerHeart. Every time you level up, you get to take a new card from one of your domains, and you get to choose some like level up options on the character guide that you go like, I want to raise 2 of my stats and I want to increase some experience.
It's our skill tree.
It's our skill tree in some respect, or like leveling up. It's the choices you make in the. And I think that the cool thing about that is that it allows you to make the dice feel like they're changing, even when you haven't changed anything in like the procedure, because the result is higher. And even if the adversary's difficulty is not higher, if I'm hitting 18 more often on my dice rolls, I'm going to feel more powerful and know that I'm going up against more powerful beings. So there's kind of a play there of like everything rises up together, but we have to mechanize those changes in a very distinct way.
No, they're great answers. And I guess that brings us on to kind of one of the key talking points and one of the core aspects of your design in this duality dice. And there's a few things that I really love about this. And I think the first one for me is first deciding with the GM on what requires a dice roll, right? Like I think that to me was quite an interesting choice there. As in previous and other games, there's a lot of more sitting back and waiting for certain aspects. So how did you come up with this idea to be like a way to get the players and the GM talking more?
I think that was you. I mean, that was there when I came in.
Yeah, well, I think that like that comes from I'm standing on the shoulders of giants in that respect. That like there are lots of games that I've played that have come before that have asked us to analyze that same question. And so things like Powered by the Apocalypse games or Forged in the Dark games are things that really impacted this, as well as something like D&D and Pathfinder, right? It's kind of like a middle space between those where you have enough narrativist elements that you are driven forward by the fiction, and also enough crunchy elements, mechanical elements that you can play over the course of 100 sessions. And so in trying to marry that, one of the big things that we looked at was like, okay, an approach like from a narrative perspective, when should we be rolling? Well, we should be rolling when there's the opportunity, when there's something doesn't go right. Okay, that's kind of basic, but then that's like ground floor. And then we're like, okay, well, we also have these currencies that are being generated by the dice. So like when you roll with hope, which means the hope die is higher of the two, then the players gain hope, and they can use that to be able to fuel cool abilities or help their allies. But when they roll with fear, the GM gains fear, and they can spend that to be able to do stuff with the adversaries that make situations worse. And so in doing that, that also reinforced for me the need for us to really be particular about where we roll dice, because if we roll dice for everything, then we generate those currencies, and things can, like, both the GM and the players will have lots of stuff that they will feel inclined to spend. And sometimes that's fun, but I think the point more so is, like, we want those things to feel special. And so so you're going to generate hope a lot. But if you just want to make 7 rolls in a row about something that really should maybe just be 1 roll, or maybe it shouldn't even be a roll because there's no potential for consequences. One of the things is, like, when you roll with fear, you fail, the GM gets to make a move, and they get to they get to change the fiction in a way that puts you in some kind of danger or impacts your character in some way. And so every dice roll matters. So that's kind of the approach. I don't know if you want to talk. Okay. There's a lot there, like, at the conception. Like, how do I make sure that those dice rolls both speak to the mechanical strengths of the game and also control how they impact the fiction?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating answer, especially you mentioned, like, the currency, right? Because from my mind, I wouldn't even consider it in that way, but you're right, like, it is the currency, and it does open up more options, sometimes to a detriment of this. And I think from a narrative point of view, one of the things that I loved from these two was also the hope and stress meter, right? And, like, I love the idea, especially as, you know, more and more conversation, and we're seeing more and more media reflect that of mental health, right, and stress playing a narrative aspect for it. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever read Berserk, but it's one of my personal favorites, and the whole, like, stress and mental aspect that Guts goes through on his journey. So for you to almost, like, help give a great talking point or character depth in that, I think is also just a great tool in itself. So just want to say congrats, and if you want to speak more on that one.
Oh, I mean, a lot of times in the office, we joke about the fact that stress in DaggerHeart is just like stress in real life, which is, like, you can choose to spend it, and other people can inflict it on you. And then when you run out of stress that you can take, it affects your health. Of course, sometimes it's fun to joke about to give things some levity, but also it's very real. And we wanted it to feel that way, and also hopefully invite people, say, when they hit that point where they've maxed out on their stress, and they do have to take a hit point when the GM deals them stress, that they can maybe use that as a narrative tag to say, oh, I can play this out. I can really dig in, and more than just marking it on my sheet, I have an opportunity to take the spotlight and have an exchange with an ally, or call out to my adversary or whatever. And I think in the same way that, for example, players could take a scar and lose a whole lot, that also hopefully feels like a narrative tag. So I hope when people interact with their character sheets as a whole, they find opportunities to really dig into moments at the table.
Yeah, I think that grounding, like, one of the really important things for us in DaggerHeart was to create a game where it was both, like, action oriented and fun and adventurous, and, like, you know, you can do your big cool combats, and also that there's an emotional storytelling, like, character arc side of the game. And that's why it has the name it does, right? DaggerHeart, it's about fighting cool monsters and also telling emotional stories. And so stress is one of a couple of levers that we were excited about, grounding you in, like, in feeling real, making stakes that felt real and sort of reflected, like, allow you to bring your own experience to that a little bit. I don't know, there's a fun, like, realness there that I think in you know, we're making a heroic fantasy game, and I think that there could have been a choice for us for there to not be stress, so that it felt max heroic. I don't get stressed. I'm just doing the thing. But for me, heroes are more interesting when they struggle. Heroes are interesting when they have conflict and they overcome it anyways. Yeah. And so by putting, and heroes are more interesting when they feel real, when they feel like, you know, and so, yeah, implementing some mechanics that allowed that to, for that gradation, that subtlety was simpleness.
No, I mean, to me, it leapt off the page as soon as I saw it. I was like, great, because, you know, I think we're all aware of like memes being in, especially in tabletop RPGs, everyone's backstory tends to be the most horrific, you know, abandoned as a child, emo story, but no one ever actually reflects that. Not no one, but it takes more experienced players to reflect that actually in their character. So to have the mechanic, I think, is another way to encourage it. So I think it's just a great job on that one from it. And speaking of character creation, this is one that I found really interesting. So just a quick side note, I worked on Cyberpunk 2077, so we had to take the tabletop RPG and put this in kind of interesting customizing ways, right? And like giving the players the option for their backstory, the missions to help like introduce that to that. Like, again, very different from video game perspective from yours. I see obviously you've got ways to help encourage that with, like, when you choose a class, you guys give recommendations to how to spend your points, as well as possible introductions as well. And I guess similar thing in terms of you know, the imagination is so brilliant. How do you guys, I guess, balance again the character creation by guiding the player while also allowing them to kind of fulfill that fantasy?
It's a great question. Oh, I think that we sort of collaborate on this, in that, like, I think the cards really help people to have things to look at immediately. The art is really evocative, so that helps them to, like, down and be like, this is the kind of character I want to play. And so that immediacy, that it's in my hands and I can, like, hold it, I can, you know, I'm reminded of it all the time, also really helps. But then I think the other side of that, which is much more narrative, is like the backgrounds and connections. You want to talk about those?
Yeah, I think personally, making a fun, interesting character to play is often about asking the right questions.
Right, okay.
I think Alex Roberts really kind of executed on that perfectly in terms of For the Queen. It's a perfect game to describe that. But when we create background and connection questions, we're trying to present evocative tools for people to not only connect with their own backstory, but to give the GM information that they can incorporate into the campaign, and to connect all of the characters to kind of move past that we don't know each other and we're not related in any way. Stumbling block that I sometimes encounter. And of course, we leave it open for people to be able to ask their own questions, because sometimes you come to the table and you just know, or you have to ask the player across the way. And so those questions are presented as much, I think, for people to answer as to inspire people to ask their own questions. So they're kind of doing double duty there.
Yeah.
And I hope that just the practice of asking and answering those questions allows people to weave the story together with the GM from the jump, from that session zero, to start making this tapestry, so that when everybody comes back to play, everyone's already invested. You know where places are on the map. That's part of why we have the blank maps that people can fill in. That's a huge part of it. You know that fun little detail from your another player's backstory, so that you can set them up to incorporate it in session. You know the kind of character arc, maybe even that people might be starting to explore, so that you can get there. Because I think games, in my experience, games play the best when everyone is driving for people to have those satisfying moments. And it can take work, but it's like good, fun, exciting work.
Yeah. Well, and I think that we have the opportunity in a tabletop game that I think is really challenging in video games, which is like, how do I get the player bought in on the story?
Yeah.
Like, and that's one of the big challenges narratively, I would imagine, is like, I need to make it compelling enough that they care. How do I make them care?
Yeah.
So one of the really powerful tools that we have in the tabletop space, because we aren't like running off an engine, but running off people's minds, is something I like to call like holding up the mirror. So whenever a player gives me something as a GM, one of the tools that I have is to reflect that back to them, right? Which is to say, like, hey, you tell me that you're playing a ranger, and your ranger was at a young age was attacked by this creature for this tiger with, you know, with eagle wings in the forest, and it killed your youngest brother, and it's been searching for you, and you've been searching for it for revenge or whatever. And then so that means I, in the sessions, you know, as we move through the campaign, can have an NPC who's like, oh yeah, there was a weird, like, tiger thing in the right, like, I can start to reflect. And so I'm just holding up a mirror to the player to give them me, but in a cool way. It feels too powerful for the like simplicity that it is.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you've given it to me and I'm just giving it back to you, but the player then cares a lot because they made up a thing and now they see it coming to, you know, to fruition.
And one of the things we talk about in the room is like different games ask different things of people. That's true of video games, that's true of tabletop games. But for example, the crunchy games we love ask us to learn the mechanics, to remember the mechanics, to maybe be faster on our feet with math, or have the calculator at hand if we need it. One of the things that DaggerHeart asks of the people that come to the table is to be invested in the narrative and to be excited to help people uncover details, for kind of everyone to get their hands into the project together, to contribute, to be ready to jump on. You know, there's no initiative, so it's asking you to sit there and be like, oh, this is the moment my spell will be perfect, or oh, if I do this, the other player will get to do their kind of big signature move that they've been waiting to do all session. So different games have different asks. Like, some games are puzzles, and some games need you to be fast and furious with the keys so you can kill the monsters. So the background questions, the connection questions, the GM best practices, all of those things.
The collaborative world building.
Yeah, they're part of that ask that DaggerHeart has of folks who engage with it. And I hope that also the tools are there for people to enjoy.
No, it's amazing, honestly. That's my last question, but I could pick your minds for ages. You've done an amazing job with all the stuff you worked on. I hope you feel like so happy. Again, it's easy to get lost in feeling like, oh my god, I didn't do X, Y, or Z, but like, you released something, it's amazing. Honestly, like I said, I had so many questions from just what I've seen, and there's still so much to pick. So again, congratulations, and thank you for your time, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for making Cyberpunk.
Cheers, guys.
I've been playing it through the course of like when we got done with DaggerHeart. I jumped in because I hadn't jumped in earlier, and it's so cool. I mean, I can only imagine how much work went into every single bit of that game. And I know that it's like it
truly feels infinite.
It truly feels like a cool world. So fantastic job. And and anytime you want to talk, honestly, like we love doing this. So if you want to start, you've had more and you want to chat for more or longer, let us know. We're here.
Sure. I'd absolutely love that, guys. Absolutely love that. But I don't want to take up any more of your time, because I'm sure you've all got a busy day, and it's the end of the day back in the UK. So I'm going to start getting ready for bed on my side. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And congratulations again. It was an absolute pleasure to meet and talk with you all.
So good to meet you. Okay, we'll talk soon.
All
right, bye.
Thank you.
So thank you, all of you who stayed and watched to the end. I really appreciate it. There's a lot of different interesting takes, a lot of different thoughts that especially I had like I mentioned in the sense of, how do I say it? Using the dice, right? And them kind of discussing how it is that you can still add an element of mastery despite one of the core mechanics being based on that of chance or randomization. So I thought that was fascinating to learn, but also understanding how do they add narrative towards that of the dice too. So again, it was a great one for me. I hope that you did enjoy this one, and I just want to say thank you for all of them for getting us involved and chatting with them. So if you haven't already, do go check out DaggerHeart. We'll have a link in the description down below as well as their contacts. So thank you all very much. Take care. If you want to reach out to me, you can via that of email, leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. If you want to get in contact with me with these social medias, please head over to either that on Twitter, which is @MaxPairs, or Blue Sky, which is again @MaxPairs.BlueSky, I believe. And yeah, some great stuff there. We're always working on something new, so I hope you enjoy it. And again, thank you so much. I'll catch you all next time.